The words slipped out of my mouth like poison disguised as honey. Honestly, Malcolm is just awful in bed. I mean, completely hopeless. I laughed as I typed the message into our group chat, my fingers dancing across my phone screen with vindictive glee. The kitchen felt suffocating that Tuesday evening, and I needed something to break the monotony of our perfect suburban life. I was Ulalia Venn, 32 years old, and I worked as an insurance claims adjuster. My life looked picture-perfect from the outside. Nice house, stable husband, beautiful daughter. But inside, I felt like I was drowning in mediocrity. Malcolm, my 36-year-old husband, taught middle school history and had this infuriating way of being content with everything. Content with our routine dinners, content with our predictable conversations, content with our boring weekend plans. The group chat notification pinged immediately. My heart raced with anticipation. Finally, some excitement in my dull existence. Sarah Mills responded first. "Girl, you're terrible." But honestly, we've all been there. Janet Wu added, "Maybe you should talk to him about it instead of roasting him online." But then came the response that made my blood freeze. It was from my best friend, Vivian Drake, my own mother. Her message appeared on the screen like a bomb waiting to explode. "Really? That's funny because he was amazing with me." My phone slipped from my trembling hands, clattering onto the kitchen counter. The sound echoed through our modest suburban home like a gunshot. Malcolm looked up from where he sat at the dining table, grading papers with his usual methodical precision. "Everything okay, honey?" His voice carried that gentle concern that used to make me feel safe but now just irritated me. His brown hair was slightly disheveled from running his hands through it while working, and his reading glasses sat perched on his nose. He looked so ordinary, so predictable. "Fine," I snapped, grabbing my phone and staring at the screen. The message was still there. My mother had just admitted to sleeping with my husband in our family group chat. "Just work stuff." But Malcolm's expression had changed. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, not hurt, but something calculating. He'd seen my reaction. He always noticed everything, filed it away in that organized mind of his. "Ulalia, what did you just post about me?" His voice was eerily calm. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Nothing important, just girl talk." "Show me." "It's private." Malcolm stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. At 6 feet tall, he wasn't intimidating, but there was something different about his posture now. "Show me what you wrote about our private life to your friends." "You're being paranoid." I forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. "God, Malcolm, you're so sensitive about everything." It was just a joke. Our 9-year-old daughter Nora appeared in the kitchen doorway, her dark hair in messy pigtails, and her school uniform wrinkled. "Why are you guys fighting?" "We're not fighting, sweetheart," Malcolm said, his voice immediately softening. "Just having a discussion." I looked at my phone again. More messages had appeared in the group chat. Janet was asking what Vivian meant. Sarah had sent a string of shocked face emojis, but my mother had gone silent. "I need to call my mom," I muttered, pushing past Malcolm toward the stairs. "Ulalia." His voice stopped me cold. "We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. In our bedroom, I dialed my mother's number with shaking fingers. She answered on the first ring. "Ulalia, honey, I am so sorry. That was supposed to be a private message to Sarah. I hit the wrong chat." "What do you mean it was supposed to be private?" My voice cracked. "Mum, what are you talking about?" There was a long pause. "Sweetie, you know your father and I have been having problems. And Malcolm was so kind when you two were separated last year. He was just being supportive, and one thing led to another." The room spun around me. "You slept with my husband?" "It was only twice. And you were the one who moved out. You said you needed space to figure things out." I was gone for 3 weeks, I screamed into the phone. 3 weeks, and you slept with my husband? Downstairs, I could hear Malcolm talking quietly to Nora, probably making her a snack and helping with homework like he did every night. The perfect father, the reliable husband, the man who had apparently slept with my own mother. Ulalia, please don't make this into something bigger than it was. We were both lonely, and I hung up and threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, the screen cracking in a spiderweb pattern. Malcolm appeared in the doorway. The whole neighborhood heard you screaming. What's going on? Ask my mother. I couldn't look at him. Ask her about those 2 times you were amazing. His face went pale. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he sat down heavily on the edge of our bed, his head in his hands. I never meant for you to find out that way. So it's true. The words felt like glass in my throat. You left, Ulalia. You packed your bags and said you needed to find yourself. You wouldn't answer my calls for days at a time. Nora kept asking when Mommy was coming home, and I didn't know what to tell her. So you decided to sleep with my mother. Your mother came over to check on us. She brought dinner for Nora and me. We talked about you, about how much we both missed you. She was crying, I was crying. He looked up at me with those tired brown eyes. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake that I've regretted every day since. I stared at him, this man I'd married 8 years ago. He looked older now, worn down by years of my complaints and dissatisfaction. But there was something else in his expression, something I'd never seen before. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't begging for forgiveness. Why didn't you tell me? Because you came back and said you wanted to work on our marriage. I thought we could move past it. Move past it? I laughed bitterly. You slept with my mother, Malcolm, my mother. And you've been sleeping with your personal trainer for the past 6 months. The words hit me like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to deny it, but no sound came out. Malcolm stood up and walked to his dresser, pulling out a manila folder. Did you think I wouldn't notice? The gym charges on our credit card when you're supposed to be working late. The new clothes, the sudden interest in fitness. The way you smile at your phone when you think I'm not looking. He opened the folder and spread photographs across our bed. Pictures of me and Cal Finch leaving hotels. Pictures of us kissing in his car. Pictures of us at restaurants during my supposed work hours. How long have you known? I whispered. 3 months. I hired a private investigator after I found the hotel receipt in your purse. I sank into the chair by our window, my legs unable to support me anymore. Malcolm, Save it. His voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. I know exactly what you're going to say. You'll tell me it's my fault for being boring. You'll say I drove you to it by not being exciting enough, not paying enough attention to you, not being the husband you deserved. He was right. Those were exactly the words forming in my mind. But here's the thing, Ulalia. I made a mistake with your mother. One terrible mistake that happened during the worst 3 weeks of my life. You've been having an affair for 6 months. You've been lying to me every single day, using our credit cards to pay for hotel rooms, and making me look like a fool to everyone who knows us. It's not the same thing, I said weakly. You're right, it's not. Malcolm gathered up the photographs and put them back in the folder. My mistake was emotional. Yours is calculated. My mistake happened when we were separated. Yours happened while we were supposedly working on our marriage. He walked toward the door, then stopped. Oh, and Ulalia, I've already filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone in our bedroom with my cracked phone and shattered world. Downstairs, I could hear him helping Nora with her math homework, his voice patient and gentle. The same voice that had just destroyed my life with surgical precision. I picked up my broken phone and stared at the group chat. 23 new messages, all from friends and family members trying to make sense of what they'd witnessed. My dirty laundry aired for everyone to see, my secrets exposed in the most humiliating way possible. But as I sat there in the growing darkness, one thought kept echoing in my mind. Malcolm had known about Cal for 3 months. He'd been collecting evidence, building a case, planning his revenge. The quiet, boring husband I'd underestimated had been 3 steps ahead of me the entire time. And tomorrow, the real consequences would begin. The divorce papers arrived at exactly 9:47 a.m. the next morning, delivered by a stern-faced process server who didn't seem to care that I answered the door in my bathrobe with mascara streaked down my cheeks. I'd barely slept, my mind racing between fury at Malcolm's betrayal with my mother and panic about my own exposed affair. Ulalia Venn, the server's voice was professionally neutral. Yes, my voice came out as a croak. You've been served. He handed me a thick manila envelope and walked away without another word. Malcolm had already left for work, dropping Nora off at school, like nothing had changed, like he hadn't just detonated a nuclear bomb in the middle of our lives. I stood in our doorway, watching our neighbors pretend they weren't staring. Mrs. Patterson from across the street gave me a sympathetic wave, but I could see the curiosity burning in her eyes. Inside the envelope were documents that made my hands shake. Petition for dissolution of marriage, request for primary physical custody, financial disclosure requirements. The language was cold and legal, but the message was clear. Malcolm wasn't just leaving me, he was taking everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Cal. Hey babe, missed you at the gym yesterday. Everything okay? I stared at his message, remembering how exciting those texts used to make me feel. Cal Finch was everything Malcolm wasn't: spontaneous, passionate, dangerous. At 31, he had the kind of lean, muscled body that came from years of dedicated training. His smile could light up a room, and when he looked at me, I felt like the most desirable woman in the world. But now, holding divorce papers in my trembling hands, Cal's text just felt like evidence of my own stupidity. I called in sick to work and spent the morning pacing around our house, seeing it through new eyes. Malcolm's methodical organization was everywhere: labeled storage bins, color-coded calendars, neat stacks of important documents. How had I ever thought he wouldn't notice my affair? The man who alphabetized our spice rack and kept detailed records of every household expense. Around noon, my mother called. Ulalia, honey, we need to talk. I don't want to hear your voice right now. I was sitting on our couch surrounded by legal documents I didn't understand. Please, let me explain. Malcolm is being vindictive because he's hurt. Men do that sometimes. Vindictive? I laughed bitterly. Mom, you slept with my husband, and apparently I've been having an affair for 6 months. We're both terrible people, but at least I can admit it. You're not terrible. You're just unhappy. Malcolm never appreciated you the way he should have. He's always been so ordinary. There it was, the voice that had been in my head for years, telling me I deserved better, that I was settling, that Malcolm's stability was actually boring mediocrity. My mother had been feeding my dissatisfaction for our entire marriage, and I'd been too blind to see it. Did you encourage me to have the affair? There was a long pause. I encouraged you to find happiness. That's not an answer. Ulalia, you've been complaining about Malcolm for years, about how predictable he is, how he never surprises you, how you feel like roommates instead of lovers. I just wanted you to remember what passion felt like. So you introduced me to Cal. I thought you might enjoy having a personal trainer. I didn't know you'd connect with him the way you did. But that was a lie. My mother had specifically recommended Cal's gym, had even paid for my first month of sessions as a birthday gift. She'd known exactly what she was doing. I have to go, I said. Malcolm's lawyer wants to meet with me tomorrow. Ulalia, wait. There's something else you need to know. My stomach dropped. What now? Malcolm called your work yesterday. He spoke to your supervisor about the discrepancies in your timesheets. The room started spinning. What discrepancies? Apparently, You've been claiming overtime hours when the building's keycard system shows you left early. And there are several days when you called in sick but were seen at the gym or restaurants. I closed my eyes, trying to remember all the lies I'd told. The fake doctor's appointments, the invented client meetings, the overtime hours I'd never worked but had charged to cover my hotel expenses with Cal. How much does he know? Everything, honey. He's been building a case against you for months. After I hung up, I sat in our living room and really looked around for the first time in years. Malcolm's presence was everywhere. The books he'd carefully organized, the photos he'd printed and framed of our family vacations, the plants he'd nursed back to health when I'd forgotten to water them. This wasn't the home of a boring man. This was the home of someone who cared about details, who paid attention, who noticed when things were wrong. And I'd been so busy looking for excitement elsewhere that I'd missed the quiet strength that had been holding our family together. My phone rang. It was Janet from work. "Ulalia, I probably shouldn't be calling you, but HR wants to see you first thing tomorrow morning." "About what?" "The timesheet investigation. And there are some questions about expense reports too. Hotel charges that don't match any client meetings on the calendar." I hung up and immediately called Cal. He answered on the third ring, and I could hear gym music in the background. "Hey, beautiful, what's up?" "We have a problem. Malcolm knows about us." There was a pause, then Cal's voice came back lower. "Knows what exactly?" "Everything. He has pictures, Cal. Pictures of us at hotels, restaurants, in your car. He's been having us followed." "Shit." Another pause. "Okay, well, these things happen. Marriages end. It's not the end of the world." His casual tone made my blood boil. "It's the end of my world. He's taking custody of my daughter. He's going to ruin me financially. And now work is investigating me for timesheet fraud." "Ulalia, you need to calm down. You're spiraling." "I'm spiraling. My entire life is falling apart." "Look, maybe we should take a break while you sort this out. I don't need the drama right now." The line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief. The man I'd risked everything for had just abandoned me at the first sign of consequences. That evening, when Malcolm came home with Nora, I was waiting in the kitchen. Our daughter ran upstairs to change out of her school clothes, leaving us alone. "We need to talk," I said. Malcolm set his briefcase down carefully and loosened his tie. "I think we've said everything we need to say. Please, I know I messed up, but we can work through this, for Nora's sake." He looked at me with those tired brown eyes. "Ulalia, do you know what the hardest part of the last 6 months has been?" I shook my head. "It wasn't discovering your affair. It wasn't even finding out that you were using our money to pay for hotel rooms with another man. It was watching you lie to our daughter every single day. I never involved Nora in this. You told her you were working late when you were with him. You told her Mommy had to travel for work when you were spending weekends in hotels. You made me complicit in your lies every time I had to cover for your absence." His words hit like physical blows. "Malcolm, And then yesterday, you humiliated me in front of our friends and family. You made our private life into a public joke. You exposed our daughter to adult problems she should never have to think about." Nora's voice drifted down from upstairs, talking to herself as she played. She sounded so young, so innocent. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I know you are. But sorry doesn't undo 6 months of lies. Sorry doesn't give me back the nights I stayed awake wondering what I'd done wrong. Why my wife couldn't stand to be in the same house as me." He picked up his briefcase and headed for the stairs. "My lawyer will be in touch about the custody arrangement. I'm requesting primary physical custody with supervised visitation for you until we can establish that you're stable." "Supervised visitation? Malcolm, she's my daughter." "She's our daughter, and she deserves better than what we've been giving her." He was right, and we both knew it. Nora had been caught in the middle of our dysfunction for months, watching her parents grow distant and hostile. She'd started having nightmares and problems at school, signs I'd ignored because I was too focused on my own drama. That night, after Nora was asleep, I found Malcolm in his study, working on lesson plans for his students. The room smelled like the coffee he'd been drinking and the old books that lined his shelves. "Can I ask you something?" I said from the doorway. He looked up but didn't invite me in. "Why my mother?" Malcolm set down his pen and rubbed his eyes. "Because she was there. Because she understood how much I was hurting. Because she made me feel like I wasn't completely worthless as a husband." "You're not worthless." "Aren't I? You've spent 3 years telling me I'm boring, predictable, disappointing. You've made it clear that being married to me is some kind of prison sentence." I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. I had spent years tearing him down, making him feel small, using his love for me as a weapon against him. "I never meant to hurt you that much." "But you did. And when you left, your mother was the only person who seemed to understand how broken I felt. She told me stories about your childhood, about how proud she was of the woman you'd become. She made me remember why I fell in love with you in the first place. And then you slept with her. And then we made a terrible mistake that I've regretted every day since." He looked directly at me. "But at least it was a mistake, Ulalia. What you did with Cal wasn't a mistake. It was a choice you made over and over again for 6 months." I left him alone and went to bed in our guest room. Through the thin walls, I could hear him moving around our bedroom, probably packing more of his things. Tomorrow I would face HR at work. Tomorrow I would meet with lawyers and try to salvage what was left of my life. But tonight, lying in the dark, all I could think about was how thoroughly I'd destroyed everything that mattered, and how the quiet, boring husband I'd underestimated had orchestrated it all with devastating precision. The meeting with HR went exactly as badly as I'd expected. Sandra Martinez, the department head, sat across from me in the sterile conference room with a stack of documents that detailed every lie I'd told over the past 6 months. "Ulalia, we've reviewed your timesheets against the building's keycard access logs, and there are significant discrepancies." Sandra's voice was professionally neutral, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. She'd been my mentor when I started at the company 5 years ago. "I can explain. You claimed 47 hours of overtime in the past 3 months. According to our security system, you were in the building for fewer than 30 of those hours total." The numbers hit me like a sledgehammer. I'd been so careful to vary my lies, so sure that no one was paying attention. "There are also expense reports for client dinners that don't correspond to any meetings on the company calendar. Hotel charges in the city when you were supposed to be visiting clients in completely different locations." Sandra slid a photograph across the table. It showed me and Cal entering the Marriott downtown on a Tuesday afternoon when I'd told work I was meeting with a client in Philadelphia. "How did you get this?" "Your husband's attorney provided it as part of their investigation. Apparently, there are dozens more." I stared at the photograph, remembering that afternoon. Cal had surprised me with champagne and strawberries. We'd spent hours in bed, and I'd felt so alive, so desired. Now it just looked sordid and pathetic. "We're terminating your employment effective immediately. You'll need to repay the fraudulent overtime charges, and we're referring this matter to our legal department." I walked out of the office building in a daze, carrying a cardboard box with my few personal belongings. Other employees stared as I passed, their whispers following me to the parking garage. By now, everyone knew why I was being fired. My phone buzzed with a text from Cal. "Can we meet? Need to talk." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at the Bistro, a trendy cafe downtown where we'd had some of our most romantic dates. I needed to hear him say that we could get through this together, that our relationship was worth fighting for. Cal was already seated at a corner table when I arrived, his muscular frame hunched over a coffee cup. He looked up when I approached, and I could see the tension in his green eyes. "You look terrible," he said by way of greeting. "I just got fired. My husband is taking my daughter away from me. I think terrible is appropriate." Cal glanced around the cafe nervously. Listen, Ulalia, we need to talk about us. My heart sank. If you're about to break up with me, I swear to God. This whole situation is getting out of hand. I never signed up for divorce drama and custody battles. I thought you had your shit together. I do have my shit together. This is just a rough patch. A rough patch? You committed fraud at work. Your husband has been stalking us for months. Your family is completely dysfunctional. He leaned back in his chair. I need some space to think. Space to think or space to find your next married client? Cal's jaw tightened. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I risked everything for you. My marriage, my job, my relationship with my daughter, and now you're abandoning me because things got complicated. You're being dramatic. I'm being dramatic. My voice rose, and other customers started looking our way. I'm losing everything, and you think I'm being dramatic? That's when I saw him. Malcolm was standing near the cafe entrance, scanning the room until his eyes found me. He looked calm and composed in his navy blue teaching clothes, but there was something determined in his expression that made my stomach drop. He walked over to our table with measured steps. Ulalia, I need you to come home. Nora's school called. She had a panic attack during math class. What? I started to stand, but Cal grabbed my wrist. We're not finished talking, Cal said. Malcolm's eyes fixed on Cal's hand on my wrist. I think you are. And who are you to decide that? Cal stood up, using his height and build to intimidate. At 6'2", with a gym-sculpted physique, he was used to people backing down. Malcolm didn't move. I'm the father of a 9-year-old girl who's having panic attacks because her mother has been lying to her for months. That's not my problem. You made it your problem when you started sleeping with my wife. The cafe had gone quiet around us. I could feel dozens of eyes watching our confrontation, phones probably recording everything. Malcolm, please, I whispered. Let's just go. But Cal wasn't done. You know what, buddy? Maybe if you'd been a better husband, your wife wouldn't have needed to find satisfaction elsewhere. Several customers gasped audibly. I saw someone in the corner definitely filming with their phone. Malcolm's expression didn't change. You're probably right. I should have paid more attention to the credit card bills. Should have noticed the hotel charges and fake overtime claims sooner. Should have realized that my wife was stealing money from her employer to fund her affair. Malcolm, stop, I pleaded. Should have documented everything from the beginning instead of hoping we could work things out. Malcolm pulled out his phone and started reading. February 14th, Marriott downtown, $237, charged to the company card as client entertainment. February 21st, same hotel, same charge. March 15th, the Westin, this time for a full weekend. Put the phone away, I hissed. March 22nd, emergency overtime claimed while the keycard logs show you left work at noon to meet Cal at his apartment. Cal's face had gone pale. Dude, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? Malcolm finally showed emotion, his voice rising. What's wrong with me is that I've spent 6 months being made to look like a fool, while my wife and her boyfriend spent my daughter's college fund on hotel rooms. The entire cafe was watching now. I could see people whispering, pointing, recording. This was going to be all over social media within hours. You're embarrassing yourself, Cal said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm embarrassing myself. Malcolm laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm not the one who got fired for fraud today. I'm not the one who's about to lose custody of my child. I'm not the one whose boyfriend is already looking for the exit. Cal's eyes darted toward the door. I don't have to listen to this. No, you don't, but you should know that my attorney has documented every hotel visit, every restaurant meal, every lie that was told to cover your affair. And when the divorce proceedings start, all of it becomes public record. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you because in about 6 months, when Ulalia realizes that you're not going to rescue her from the consequences of her choices, she's going to try to blame everything on you. She's going to claim you seduced her, manipulated her, Maybe even that you forced her to steal from her employer. I stared at Malcolm in shock. I would never, wouldn't you? He looked at me with those calm brown eyes. When has anything ever been your fault, Ulalia? When have you ever taken responsibility for your choices without trying to blame someone else? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and I realized, with growing horror, that he was right. I was already planning to paint myself as Cal's victim, to claim that he'd manipulated me into the affair. Cal must have realized it too, because he suddenly looked at me like I was a stranger. I'm done with this crazy situation. He walked out of the cafe without looking back, leaving me standing there with my estranged husband and a room full of strangers who'd just witnessed the complete destruction of my dignity. Malcolm pulled out his wallet and left money on the table for my untouched coffee. Nora is at my mother's house. She's asking for you. I followed him out of the bistro in silence, my face burning with shame. Behind us, I could hear the excited chatter of customers dissecting what they'd just witnessed. In the parking lot, Malcolm stopped beside his sensible Honda Civic. "Why did you do that?" I asked. "Why did you humiliate me like that?" "I didn't humiliate you, Ulalia. You humiliated yourself. I just made sure there were witnesses." "What's that supposed to mean?" Malcolm opened his car door, then paused. "It means that when you try to rewrite history in court, when you try to claim that I was controlling or abusive, or that you were the victim in all of this, there will be dozens of people who saw the truth today." He drove away, leaving me standing alone in the parking lot, with the wreckage of my life scattered around me. My phone was buzzing with notifications, text messages, social media tags, missed calls. The video of our confrontation was already spreading, and the comments were brutal. "Imagine stealing from your job to cheat on your husband. That poor man and his daughter. The boyfriend couldn't run away fast enough, lol. She looks exactly like the type who would do this." I sat in my car and cried until there were no tears left. Then I drove to my mother's house, because I had nowhere else to go. But when I pulled into her driveway, I saw Malcolm's car parked on the street. Through the living room window, I could see him sitting on the couch with my mother and daughter, all three of them looking at a photo album. They looked like a family, a real family, with love and trust and honesty between them. And I was on the outside, looking in at everything I'd destroyed. 3 weeks had passed since the cafe incident, and my life had become a social media nightmare. The video of Malcolm exposing my affair had been viewed over 50,000 times across various platforms. Local Facebook groups were sharing it with comments like, "This is why you don't cheat," and "That husband handled it perfectly." I'd been staying at a cheap extended stay hotel since my mother refused to let me move back home. "I need to focus on my relationship with my granddaughter right now," she'd said when I showed up at her door with my suitcase. The betrayal stung worse than Malcolm's calculated revenge. My lawyer, an overpriced divorce attorney named Robert Kim, had delivered more bad news that morning. "The evidence against you is overwhelming, Ulalia. The financial fraud, the documented lies, the affair. It's going to be very difficult to get joint custody, let alone primary custody." "What about Malcolm sleeping with my mother? Doesn't that count for something?" "It happened while you were separated and before any custody arrangements were in place. Meanwhile, your affair occurred during the marriage while you were living together and co-parenting. The judge is going to see a significant difference." I'd been spiraling for days, barely eating, barely sleeping. The isolation was crushing. Janet from work had stopped returning my calls. Sarah from the gym had blocked me on social media. Even casual acquaintances were avoiding me at the grocery store. But that evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Marcus Bell. Cal's friend from the gym. Heard you're going through a rough time. Want to grab drinks and talk?" Marcus had been at the bistro the day of my public humiliation. He was one of Cal's workout buddies, a 35-year-old personal trainer with the kind of aggressive personality that attracted drama. I should have ignored the text, but I was desperate for human contact. We met at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar downtown where I was unlikely to run into anyone I knew. Marcus was already 3 drinks in when I arrived, his face flushed and his voice too loud. "Ulalia, there's the woman of the hour." He gestured to the empty bar stool beside him. "What are you drinking?" "Just a wine, white wine." Marcus ordered my drink and launched into what seemed like a prepared speech. "You know, I've been thinking about what happened with you and Cal, and I think you got a raw deal." "What do you mean?" "Cal's been bragging about you for months, talking about how he landed a married woman and how easy it was to get you to pay for everything. Made it sound like some kind of conquest." The words hit me like ice water. "He said that." "Oh yeah, called you his sugar mama. Said you were so desperate for attention that you'd do anything to keep him interested." I gripped my wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. "That's not how it was." "I'm just telling you what he said. And now that things got complicated, he's already moved on to some other lonely housewife. That's his pattern." Marcus leaned closer, his breath reeking of whiskey. "But here's the thing. I think your husband set you up." "What are you talking about?" "Think about it. He knew about the affair for months but didn't say anything. He could have confronted you privately, worked things out. Instead, he waited until he had enough evidence to destroy you completely. That's not the behavior of a hurt husband. That's the behavior of someone planning revenge." I wanted to disagree, but Marcus was voicing thoughts I'd been trying to suppress. Malcolm's calm demeanor during our confrontations, his methodical documentation, his strategic timing, it all felt too calculated for someone who was simply heartbroken. "He manipulated the whole situation," Marcus continued. "Probably even encouraged your mother to seduce him, so he'd have ammunition against her too." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Your own mother won't even talk to you now. He's turned your whole family against you." By the time I left the bar 2 hours later, Marcus had convinced me that I was the victim of an elaborate setup. Malcolm hadn't been the wounded husband gathering evidence. He'd been a puppet master orchestrating my downfall. I drove to our house, my judgment clouded by wine and Marcus's poisonous words. Malcolm's car was in the driveway, and I could see lights on in the living room. It was almost 10 p.m. on a school night, but I didn't care. I used my key to let myself in. Malcolm was on the couch, grading papers, while Nora did homework at the coffee table. They both looked up when I entered, and I saw fear flash across my daughter's face. "Mommy?" Nora's voice was small and uncertain. "Hi, baby. I missed you so much." I moved toward her, but Malcolm stood up, positioning himself between us. "Ulalia, you can't be here. The temporary custody order specifies supervised visitation only." "She's my daughter. I have a right to see her." "Not like this. You've been drinking." Nora was watching our exchange with wide, frightened eyes. She looked so small in her pink pajamas, her homework spread out around her like a protective barrier. "I had 1 glass of wine. I'm not drunk." "1 glass?" Malcolm's voice was skeptical. "You reek of alcohol. Don't you dare judge me, not after what you did." "What I did? The setup, the manipulation. You orchestrated this whole thing to destroy me." Malcolm glanced at Nora, then back at me. "Sweetie, why don't you go upstairs and brush your teeth? I'll be up to tuck you in soon." "Is Mommy staying?" Nora asked hopefully. The question broke my heart. My little girl still wanted me here, still believed we could be a family. "No, honey, Mommy has to go back to her hotel tonight." "Why can't she stay here? This is her house too." Malcolm knelt down to Nora's eye level. "Remember what we talked about? Sometimes grown-ups need to live separately for a while to work out their problems." "But I want Mommy to stay." "I know you do, and Mommy wants to stay too. But right now, it's better for everyone if she doesn't." Nora gathered up her homework and trudged upstairs, her shoulders slumped with disappointment. I watched her go, my heart breaking with every step. When we were alone, Malcolm turned back to me. "You need to leave. We need to talk about this, about what you did to me. What I did to you." His calm facade finally cracked. Ulalia, I didn't make you have an affair. I didn't make you steal from your employer. I didn't make you lie to our daughter for months. But you set me up. You waited until you could destroy me completely instead of trying to save our marriage. Malcolm stared at me for a long moment. Do you want to know why I waited? Yes. Because the first time I suspected something was wrong, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I wasn't paying enough attention to you, maybe I was taking our marriage for granted. So I planned a surprise weekend getaway, booked us a cabin in the mountains, arranged for my mother to watch Nora. He sat down heavily on the couch. You know what you said when I told you about it? I didn't answer. You said you were too busy. You had a work project that couldn't wait, except I found out later that you spent that weekend with Cal at a hotel in the city. The memory came flooding back. I'd been so excited about the weekend with Cal that I'd barely listened to Malcolm's romantic plans. The second time I tried to talk to you about us, you told me I was being clingy and insecure. You said I needed to give you space to grow as a person. Malcolm, the third time I suggested marriage counseling. You laughed and said our problems weren't that serious, that I was being dramatic. He looked at me with those tired brown eyes. So yes, I stopped trying to save our marriage and started documenting your affair instead. Because every time I tried to fix things, you made it clear that you didn't want them fixed. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you said you loved me and meant it? When was the last time you seemed happy to see me come home from work? When was the last time you chose to spend time with me instead of finding an excuse to be somewhere else? I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. Because he was right. I'd been emotionally checked out of our marriage long before I'd started the affair with Cal. I didn't set you up, Ulalia. I just stopped pretending that you wanted to be married to me. Upstairs, I could hear Nora brushing her teeth, getting ready for bed without me there to help her. The sound of our normal nighttime routine continuing without me was devastating. I want to see her, I said quietly. Then follow the custody agreement, schedule supervised visits through the court, prove that you're stable and sober. Show up consistently instead of disappearing for weeks at a time. I never disappeared. You've seen Nora twice in 3 weeks. Twice. She asks about you every day, and I have to keep making excuses for why Mommy doesn't call, why Mommy doesn't come to her soccer games, why Mommy doesn't seem to want to spend time with her. The accusation hit home because it was true. I'd been so consumed with my own drama, my own self-pity, that I'd neglected the one person who needed me most. I'm fighting for custody, I said weakly. No, you're not. You're fighting to win. There's a difference. Malcolm walked to the front door and held it open. You need to leave now, or I'm calling the police. I looked around our living room one last time, at the family photos on the mantel, at Nora's art project stuck to the refrigerator, at the life I'd systematically destroyed through my own selfishness. This isn't over, I said as I walked past him. Yes, it is, Malcolm replied quietly. It's been over for months. You're just finally starting to realize it. He closed the door behind me with a soft click, and I heard the deadbolt turn. Through the window, I watched him turn off the lights and head upstairs to tuck our daughter into bed. I sat in my car in the driveway for a long time, staring at the house where I used to live, where I used to be someone's wife and someone's mother. Now I was just someone who used to matter, someone who used to belong. And the worst part was knowing that every bit of it was my own fault. The courthouse smelled of old wood and shattered hopes. I sat trembling beside my lawyer, dressed conservatively, trying to look like the stable mother I no longer was. Across the room, Malcolm appeared calm and composed, flanked by his formidable attorney. Judge Chen's sharp gaze swept the room. Malcolm's lawyer presented the evidence methodically. 47 hours of fraudulent overtime funding hotel rooms and dinners with Cal, explicit texts, photos of our secret meetings, bank statements showing marital funds misused. The worst was Nora's impact. Her teacher and counselor testified to panic attacks, nightmares, falling grades, and a child who asked why Mommy was never home, feeling she'd caused the trouble. My lawyer tried to frame it as emotional neglect in our marriage, Malcolm's affair with my mother, my need for support. But on the stand, under cross-examination, my rehearsed excuses collapsed. I had an affair, I admitted. I lied for months, stole from our accounts, mocked Malcolm. I blamed him, but I was selfish. I put my desires above Nora's needs. The judge awarded Malcolm primary custody, granting me supervised visitation only after substance evaluation and counseling. The gavel fell like a door slamming shut. Outside, Malcolm approached. "This doesn't have to be the end. Get help. Be honest. Nora needs a mother who puts her first." My mother's words echoed, "You're not ready." For the first time, I stopped blaming everyone else. I called a therapist. It was a small beginning, but after destroying everything through lies and selfishness, it was the only path left toward redemption.